Hello, STEM Prep scholars. Today you are going to be listening to a story from our knowledge strand, King and Queens. Today's story is titled Cinderella. So let's go ahead and get our listening ears ready and let's begin our story. Cinderella. Once upon a time, a little girl's father married a new wife. The little girl's stepmother forced her to do the hardest and dirtiest work in the house, while the stepsisters did nothing. When her work was finally done, she would sit tired and alone on the hearth by the fireplace among the ashes and cinders. A hearth is an area in the front of a fireplace, and cinders are small bits of burned wood from the fireplace. And so she came to be called Cinderella. Cinderella's stepsisters had fine rooms with soft beds and thick carpets and mirrors so large that they might see themselves at full length from head to foot. But poor Cinderella had to sleep on the floor next to the fire. Yet she bore it all patiently and did not complain to her father, for his new wife ruled him entirely. One day, the king's son, the prince, announced that he was going to hold a ball. A ball is a fancy party with dancing. The stepsisters shrieked with excitement at the announcement. All the young ladies in the kingdom were invited to the palace for a grand evening of dancing and merriment. Merriment means fun. For days the stepsisters primed in front of their mirrors and talked of nothing else. The stepsisters snapped at Cinderella. "You must help us get ready for the ball. Clean our shoes, comb our hair, hurry!" Cinderella helped her stepsisters without complaining. Silently, however, she longed to go to the ball and imagined herself dancing in the arms of the prince. At last the day came. The stepsisters and their mother left for the palace. Cinderella watched them as long as she could. When she had lost sight of them, she began to cry. So miserable and alone did she feel. How does Cinderella feel? Why does she feel that way? Let's go ahead and continue. But Cinderella was not alone after all, for she heard a gentle voice ask, "What is the matter, dear?" She looked up and saw a woman with a kind face. I wish I could," began Cinderella, but could not finish for all her tears and sobbing. "You wish to go to the ball, is that it?" said the kind woman. "Then it shall be so," said the woman, for she was, you see, Cinderella's godmother. Now run into the garden," she said to Cinderella, "and bring me a pumpkin." Cinderella went immediately to the garden, though she could not imagine what a pumpkin had to do with going to the ball. She watched her fairy godmother scoop out the inside of the pumpkin, leaving only the rind. Then the pumpkin turned into a dazzling coach lined with satin. Next, with a touch of her wand, she turned a big fat rat into a fat, jolly coachman to drive the coach. "Now, dear," said the fairy godmother, "bring me the mousetrap from the house." Cinderella brought the trap, which had 6 live mice in it. "Open the door of the trap, dear," said the fairy godmother. Then, as each mouse scurried out, she gave them a tap with her wand. Suddenly, Cinderella was surrounded by bright white light as she watched the 6 mice turn into a fine set of 6 horses, all a beautiful mouse-colored gray. "Well," said the fairy godmother with a smile, Are you pleased? Are you ready to go to the ball?" "Oh, yes," cried Cinderella, "but must I go in these dirty rags?" Her godmother laughed, and with a touch of her wand changed Cinderella's clothes into a glittering gown of gold and silver, and on her feet appeared a pair of glass slippers, the prettiest in the world. Cinderella stepped into the coach, but before she left, her fairy godmother gave her this warning: "Do not stay at the ball after midnight, not even for a moment. When the clock strikes 12, the coach will once again be a pumpkin, the horses mice, the coachman a rat, and your gown the same old clothes you had on." Cinderella promised she would leave before midnight. Then, calling out her thanks, away she rode in the coach, feeling happier than she had ever felt before. At the palace, the prince heard that a great princess had arrived, but that no one knew who she was. So he went to meet her and gave her his hand and led her into the great ballroom filled with people. As they entered, a hush fell upon the room. The dancers stopped dancing, the musicians stopped playing. Everyone stood still just to look upon the beauty of the unknown newcomer. The prince asked Cinderella to dance with him. They danced together once, then twice, then again and again. Cinderella's face shone with happiness. Everyone at the ball looked on in admiration. Everyone, that is, but the two jealous stepsisters who glared at the lovely lady, though they had no idea they were glaring at Cinderella. How quickly the time slips away when the heart is happy! As Cinderella danced again and again with the prince, she heard the great bell of the palace clock beginning to toll or ring. 1, 2, 3. "Oh," she gasped, "the clock! What time is it?" The prince answered, "Midnight." Midnight! Cinderella's cheeks grew pale. She turned and, fast as a deer, ran out of the ballroom, down a long hallway, then down a long staircase. What's going on? What's wrong with Cinderella? Why did she run away? At the foot of the staircase, she stumbled. One of her glass slippers fell off, but Cinderella could not stop. Already the clock had sounded its 11th stroke. As she leapt breathlessly out of the castle into the darkness, she heard the clock sound the last stroke of midnight, and felt her smooth gown turn into the rough cloth of her real clothes. Her dazzling coach had turned back into a pumpkin, so she ran home alone. When she got there, she was out of breath and climbed the stairs to her cold attic room. Then she noticed she was still wearing one glass slipper. Now, when Cinderella had run from the palace, the prince had raced after her, and though he had not been able to catch her, he did find it at the bottom of the staircase, the glass slipper that had fallen off her foot. And that is why, the very next morning, the sound of trumpets woke the kingdom, and the prince announced that he would marry the woman whose foot fit the glass slipper. The prince sent men to try the slipper on the foot of every woman in the land. From house to house they went, trying the slipper on foot after foot. But on one foot the slipper was too long, on another too short, on another too wide, another too narrow. And so it went until at last they came to the house of Cinderella and her stepsisters. One by one the stepsisters squeezed, pinched, and pushed, but the slipper would not fit. Then from the shadow Cinderella stepped forth and said, "Let me see if it will fit me." "You!" the stepsisters cried. "Go back to the cinders where you belong." But one of the prince's men said that he had orders to try the slipper on every woman in the kingdom. He placed the slipper on Cinderella's foot, and it fit perfectly. The stepsister's mouth dropped open in astonishment, and they were even more shocked when from her pocket Cinderella drew forth the other glass slipper. Why were the stepsisters surprised? And now the stepsisters recognized Cinderella as the beautiful lady they had seen at the ball. They threw themselves at her feet and begged her pardon for all of the ways that they had treated her so badly. Cinderella was so kind-hearted that she forgave them and embraced them. Later, after Cinderella married the prince, she even invited her stepmother and stepsisters to live at the palace. And there, Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after. The end. We are done with our story. This is the end of our story. I hope you have enjoyed our story for today. Tomorrow you will be listening to another story from our knowledge stand, King and Queens. Thank you.